This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Check out the links in the video description to get 20% off a year of Brilliant Premium. What's going on, guys? Okay, so today I thought we would try something a little bit different. I've always wanted to try my hand at making Blender tutorials, and I thought for the first tutorial we would make a scorpion, because we all know scorpions are bloody awesome. On my channel you'll find two different versions of this tutorial. You'll find the beginner version and the advanced version. This is the beginner version. So if you're completely new to Blender and have never used it before, I probably wouldn't recommend this tutorial for you, as you might still have a hard time following along. If you're completely new, I would definitely recommend Blender Guru's donut tutorial, the legendary donut tutorial. I'll leave the link in the description, of course, if you want to check it out and then come back to this tutorial. That being said, let's dive right into the tutorial. So the first thing we want to do to this cube is to add a subdivision surface modifier. So select the cube. Right down here you'll have this little, I guess a spanner, I think is the, the name of that. This little icon here. Click on that, and now you're in the Modifier tab. Click on Add a Modifier, and here you'll be greeted with all these wonderful, wonderful modifiers, which, if I'm honest, I don't know what half of them do. The most common one, I think, would be the Mirror Modifier and the Subdivision Surface Modifier, so we'll get back to the Mirror one in a minute, but right now, click on Subdivision Surface. And you can see what happened there is that the modifier just added a bunch of geometry to it, which inherently makes it smoother. Right here you can select how many, I guess, subdivisions you want to apply. One isn't enough, so if you hit 2, you can see it gets smoother. If you hit 3, it gets even smoother. So every time it's just dividing what it's already divided, basically. You can probably go up to 3 or 4, depending on how powerful your computer is. I definitely wouldn't recommend going over 4, especially not in this case, because you get diminishing returns. So if you keep going up, it will look exactly the same, but your computer will probably explode. So what you want to do is to divide it maybe 3 or 4 times, and then right-clicking on the mesh, click on Shade Smooth. This will, well, as the name suggests, make it nice and smooth for you. And what's nice with this is, even though there is a lot of geometry there, all this geometry is only controlled by these 8 points, which is great. So you can sort of move this around however you want, and this is how you model, you know, more organic shapes, which is what we're going to do here. All right, so now that that's done, we're going to start sketching out the basic shape of our scorpion here. Again, make sure you're in the side point of view by hitting 3. What we're going to do is we're going to try and sketch out the shape of the scorpion so we have reference when we're modeling. So click on the Annotate tool, and here if you have a tablet it would probably be a lot easier for you, but I'm just going to use my mouse because it doesn't really matter if it's not very clean. It's just to give me, you know, a nice idea. So scorpions sort of have a body that comes up like this, curls around, and then you have a stinger at the end. So I'm just going to draw that on like this, probably, you know, a shape kind of like this, I guess. And then we'll have, you know, maybe like a stinger somewhere around here. And, you know, again, my 2D drawing skills aren't the best, but it doesn't matter. This is just for reference. And probably somewhere around here, you're going to want to draw on maybe where the claws would be. So, you know, I would probably imagine them somewhere around here, I guess. Yeah, I guess that looks good. Cool, so now that that's done, click on Edit Mode and select the X-ray view. This will make everything nice and transparent, and it just makes things easier to edit a lot of times. Select these 4 vertices right here, and on the keyboard, hit E. This will extrude these vertices out, so it'll create extra geometry. So what we're going to try and do here is we're going to try and just extrude it a bunch of times and align it with the reference we drew a second ago. And what to do this, we're just going to basically toggle between the extrude, rotate, and scale keys or functions. And to do this, we're just going to toggle between the extrude, rotate, and scale keys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit S on our keyboard to scale it down like this. Probably not this much, maybe something like that. Then hitting G on the keyboard will allow us to, you know, just slide them around. So we'll probably put this somewhere like, I don't know, maybe like that. And then we'll rotate it a little bit so that these vertices are somewhat, you know, perpendicular to this line, which will just help everything stay nice and, you know, flow with the sketch. And yeah, so once that's done, you know, making sure again you've selected those 4 vertices. Repeat that step a few times. And yeah, basically just keep doing that until you're somewhat happy with the result. And again, you know, the how much you scale it and rotate it and all that. That depends, you know, it's up to you. It's personal preference. You know, some people would probably prefer a thicker tail. Maybe some people would prefer a thinner tail. I'm probably going to go with something a little bit more like this. So maybe this is a bit too thin. So we can then, of course, select those vertices and then just scale those back up. And then maybe, again, by selecting those vertices, we want to realign them a little bit better. So we can click on those, again, hit G to move them around. And we can just reposition them quite nicely like that. And then I'm thinking maybe this looks too much like a tadpole because, you know, the way the geometry sort of extrudes away from it is kind of, you know, it's like a tadpole kind of thing. But if we bring this down like this, all of a sudden that looks a lot more like a scorpion, I guess. Cool. And then if we click off the X-ray view, we get a lovely solid preview of what our mesh will look like. If we exit the edit mode, we can take a look at it. And yeah, for now, I would say that's pretty good. So, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you are more of a beginner in CG art. And if that's the case, I'm happy to have you on board. Now, if I could go back and give myself some advice on how to learn faster and more efficiently, it would be to improve my problem-solving skills. I didn't realize how many obstacles and really annoying problems I was going to run into. The best way to rapidly solve them is to practice, and that is where today's sponsor comes into play. A huge thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Brilliant is a problem-solving based website and app with a hands-on approach with over 60 interactive courses in math, science, and computer science that really allows you to improve your STEM knowledge. This will hugely help you to bring your animations and CG art to the next level. So, if you want to take your learning skills to the next level, you can sign up to Brilliant by checking out the link in the video description. The first 200 of you will receive 20% off a year of Brilliant Premium. Alright, let's get back to the video. Cool, now let's work on the stinger, which is the fun part. What we want to do is we want to add in an extra cube. So of course, you know, leaving the edit mode from this mesh, we want to create a new mesh, a separate mesh. So on your keyboard, hit Shift A. It'll pop up this menu and you can add a bunch of stuff, or you could just click on add up here. But again, I recommend you use the keyboard shortcuts. So we're going to add a mesh, a cube, and yeah, so this is the cube, same as the default cube. We're going to add again a subdivision surface modifier right here, so select that. Oh, we can't even see it. Okay, so hit on edit, select all those vertices, and just slide it up like this so we can see what we're doing. Exit that. And then again, maybe we'll have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. And 4 is probably a bit overkill, but because this, you know, is a fairly simple character, we can probably get away with it. Then yeah, again, hit shade smooth by right-clicking, shade smooth. And so yeah, then in edit mode, we want to bring that down like this, scale it down, just so it again matches the reference, kind of like what we did with the tail, and move around until it's kind of in the position you want it to be in. Then by selecting these 4 vertices again, hit extrude, and then we're gonna scale it down like this. Maybe bring it down like that, rotate it like that, and yeah, you know, I want more of like a hook kind of thing. So I'm gonna add in another loop cut. So to add a loop cut, you want to click on Control R and put your cursor above the area where you want to add more geometry. So in this case, it would be here. To add more, you can scroll the wheel on the mouse, and this will add more or less geometry. In this case, we only want 1, so scroll it down until you only have 1. Yeah, select that, and now you're left with just an extra loop cut, as if we'd done 2 extrusions instead of 1. So go ahead and select that, and probably, yeah, just move it around, rotate it, and scale it to, yeah, just until you get a shape you're happy with. In the X-ray view, select all those vertices and bring that forward, maybe like this, and then maybe select this. And, you know, again, this is more like up to you to just sort of play around with it until you find a shape you're happy with. But I would recommend you probably, yeah, had this basic topology laid down. And then, of course, if you want to make it nice and sharp, you would probably want to scale this down as far as it would go. And then if you really want to get fancy, we could add an extra loop cut in there, rotate it, and just scale it up, or just move it like this. But again, this is called nitpicking, and this is something you will do a lot probably in 3D, so it's always important to know when to stop. Then what we can do now is probably work on the claws. Of course, the claws, scorpions have 2 nice big fat claws to help catch their prey. And this scorpion will probably have much bigger claws because we're probably going to go for a more like Emperor Scorpion look. Again, in my second tutorial, we're going to be making an Emperor Scorpion, but like a very highly detailed one. This one is, I guess, more cartoony, you know. So hit Shift A, select a mesh, and add again a cube. Okay, this time we're going to add a mirror modifier, because the thing is with, obviously scorpions have 2 claws, right? We could model 1 claw and then, you know, duplicate it, and, you know, that would create a second claw. But then if you edit 1 claw, you'd have to go in and edit the second one, which is a bit annoying. What we can do in 3D is to add what's called a mirror modifier, and these things are an absolute lifesaver if you want to create something either symmetrical, so even like a face, you know, you'd model only one side of the face and have the second half mirrored, or if you have, you know, a character or whatever that has 2 identical separate features, just like a claw and a scorpion. The first thing you want to do is, before you add the mirror modifier, you probably want to move it out of the way. So don't forget to move the cube in edit mode, because if you move it in the object mode, it'll create problems later on. And if you've done that, you'll know what I'm talking about. So select the cube in edit mode, select those vertices, and just slide them to the right like this. Then I'm gonna add a mirror modifier, and ta-da! There it is. So of course, now if we move this around like that, it'll just create a copy, basically a duplicate. What we're going to do now is, like we did for the rest, is we're going to add a subdivision surface modifier, and then we're going to again add 1, 2, 3. All right, whatever. Let's do 4. If your computer's starting to struggle at this point, you would definitely want to turn that down. But the nice thing is that honestly, you know, your grandma's laptop could probably handle Blender if you use the right settings. So that's some good news for a lot of people. So what you want to do now is, in the edit mode, we probably want to scale this down along the x-axis, because, you know, the claws are very flat, or a lot more flat than round at least. So again, hitting the S key, we can then again just scale the whole thing up and down, and then if we hit X, it will align it on the axis we're interested in this case, the x-axis. So scale it down like that. Then what we want to do is we're going to add a loop cut right in the middle like this. So like we did before, Control R, and with your mouse, make sure you're hovering above the right area, and select that, and then right click to exit the selection, because by default it grabs it, whatever. So select those 1, 2, 3, 4. Extrude that out like this, and then probably just scale it down like that. Yeah, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing here. So select those 4 vertices, right side view, select that, and scale it down like this. Cool, so that is a very simplified claw. We could probably go ahead and make that a little bit more fancy and complicated, but for the sake of this tutorial, I want to keep it as simple as possible. We can add, I guess, we can do that. Let's just add a little loop cut right here. So again, Control R, little loop cut, and then hitting G, move that up, maybe a little bit like this, and then select that and move it. X-ray view again, select that and bring it down, and then we can do the same thing here. I could have added a mirror on the X-axis right here, so it would have duplicated the same thing twice, but whatever. In this case, we'll just keep it nice and simple. It'll be a little bit more work, but whatever. And do the same like that. Maybe we'll scale it down to make it nice and pointy. And yeah, maybe this is a little bit too long, so by selecting these vertices, we'll bring them forwards, maybe a little bit like that. And now I'm noticing they're a bit square, maybe on this side, so a very easy way to fix that is to select the top vertices, the bottom vertices by holding down Shift. And we're just going to slide this along the y-axis like that, just a tad, just to get a nicer, a nicer arc, just to make things look a bit more organic, I guess, and less square. Now we have our 2 claws. Of course, the thing is with scorpions or anything organic, nothing will be perfectly, vertical and, parallel and all nice and aligned. In Blender, by default, everything is nice and aligned because, it's a computer program and that's how things work. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and, I guess, randomize the position of the claws a little bit to make them look a bit more organic. So to do that, we're simply just going to rotate it a few times. So if you click on the top view, you can rotate it like this, maybe a little bit, and then bring them forwards just because, that would be a bit far away like that. And then maybe in the front view, by hitting 1, you can rotate them like this, I guess, and then back up here a little bit like that. Just, to make them look a bit more, just natural looking and not so, square and robotic. So there's a much better way to rotate objects, and it's something I discovered recently, actually, and it blew my mind, especially for animation. It's brilliant. Instead of hitting R, you simply hit R twice, R, and now you've got like you've got this really nice, like, I guess gimbal type of rotating tool. I'm not sure what it's doing exactly, if I'm honest, but it's brilliant. So the nice thing is we can now, instead of going in top view, rotating, then front view and rotating, we could basically just do that in a few clicks. So maybe one like this and double R, bring them forwards, and we're done, right? So it's just a lot more efficient, and I absolutely love this feature. So then again, maybe we'll slide these forwards like that and just, align them to your liking. Again, this is all down to personal preference, and, especially as a 3D artist, I would definitely encourage you to not follow tutorials like to the T. I would encourage you to try and experiment and, try maybe a few different shapes and just, because that's how things work when you're in a studio. You don't follow tutorials, hopefully not too much. So the next step is we're going to create I guess an arm that would link the claw to the body. Okay, but yeah, I'm starting to realize those claws are probably way too close to the body, because creating an arm would probably be a nightmare. So let's select those, and maybe we'll reposition them like that. Yes. Okay. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna select these 4 vertices right here, and then we're gonna basically, just like we did for the tail, just extrude a bunch of times and rotate and scale and move and all that, just to create a nice, like, I guess an arm. I guess technically these would be pedipalps, right? Modified pedipalps. I'm not a bug expert by any means, but so then you do want to probably, just move this to the left. Okay, so we can see here what's happened is, because we've been messing with the orientation of the claw, these vertices are basically all skewed and messed up. So we can fix that by, or we could again just in this view rotate it like that, or what I just showed you before is hitting double R, which gives us more control over what we're doing, and we can probably just realign those like that. Lovely jubbly. So yeah, just keep doing the extrude, rotate, scale thingamajig. Extrude, move, rotate, and we probably won't scale that too much. Extrude, move, scale, rotate like that, and we'll do it one more time here, and extrude. Maybe we'll make it sort of merge into the body like that. And in 3D, by the way, if you have 2 meshes intersecting with one another, usually it's not a problem at all. Like, as in well, in Blender at least, it won't create a bug. It just won't look very, very nice. So but again, for the sake of this tutorial, you can definitely have 2 meshes intersecting with one another. That's not a problem at all. Yeah, so maybe bring that one down like this, so they leave more like the bottom of the the bottom of the body more than like the the face. Yeah, well, actually, let's go ahead and select all of these and bring these forwards like this, because you can see that the curve here is a little bit tight, and it just looks a bit odd. But if we select these vertices and give it a bit more mass, it tends to look a little bit better. Again, this is all personal preference, and I would encourage you to spend some time. Actually, if you want to pause this video and just spend some time making the claw look nice and pretty, that's probably how you would learn quicker than following the tutorial step by step. I mean, the only thing left now is to add the 8 legs. Not 6. Scorpions are arachnid. They have 8 legs and 2 claws. So again, Shift A, Mesh, Cube, and just like what we did before with the claws, we're going to add a mirror modifier, because again we have we have a symmetrical set of legs. scale this out like that. You can see the mirror was added before I scaled, before I moved it out, but that's fine. And then again, we'll add a subdivision surface modifier and give it 2 or 3 divisions as usual. I think for the claws I forgot. Right click, shade smooth, and again right click, shade smooth. What we're gonna do is again just try and make this look like a bunch of legs. So scale this down like this maybe. So let's not worry about the location just yet. We'll just try and model a leg, or just model a leg and then just put it in the right place at the last second, I guess. So we'll scale this down, then we will scale this on the x-axis like that. Tell you what, let's move into the front view like this. X-ray view, didn't forget this time. Select those vertices, rotate them like that. Move this up like this. Then we want to pull those up like that. Put them up like this, something like this. Rotate, and again extrude, move, and again extrude, and maybe we'll scale this down completely. But this kind of looks a bit too smooth. It looks a bit like a worm. So to do that, we're going to add a few loop cuts again. So go ahead and add a loop cut right about here. Again, Control R, click on that, and just slide this probably about here. And again, do the same thing right there. Slide this down. So as you can see, this will, it'll just make the round edges a lot more sharp. And again, I keep promoting Andrew Price, but he's got a really good tutorial about this. It's the anvil, and he really explains this in a lot more depth, so I would recommend you check that out. Add a loop cut here, slide that up, loop cut, slide that up, loop cut, and maybe here we won't add a loop cut right there, but we can definitely maybe move this down so it looks a bit more like a they have these little feet things that grab onto stuff. Okay, select all that, hit 7, and then we're gonna then start positioning the leg in place. So just slide it across and make sure it lands in the right place. So right now it's way too high. Scorpions, their legs are more, they come out from like more of like the base of the body. So yeah, just hit G. Whoops, select everything, hit G and move it down like that. And then in the top view, what we can do is we can sort of have it sort of like this, but scorpion legs don't come straight out like this. They definitely come at an angle, so we can rotate them like that. And tell you what, they're way too big, so let's just scale them down. Again, S on the keyboard, scale it down and reposition it. And again, this is personal preference, how big you want the legs. Maybe, I would encourage you to try a few different things until you get it to look kind of nice. But in my case, it's still too big. It's a lot of fiddling. But yeah, that'll be fine. So now that you've got that, what we're going to do is just going to select all these vertices. So a little trick to make sure you select every vertex is to hit on click the A key on your keyboard, and you want to hit it a few times because sometimes it takes a few clicks for some reason in Blender. Again, maybe they'll fix that sometime. But once you're sure that all the vertices are selected, hit Shift D, and then you can just simply duplicate that leg. So position it like this. And what you want to do is, because we don't want the legs to be perfectly parallel, because again that would sort of ruin the organic feel, we can just simply rotate it like this and reposition it, and just basically just keep repeating that step 4 times. So duplicate, rotate, and duplicate, rotate, and put it something like that. Okay, and there we have it. So the first thing I'm noticing is that the legs are still a tad too big, so I'm just going to select that and basically just scale the whole thing down. What I can do here is, because the 3D cursor is it kind of corresponds to the center of the scale downiness. Oh my goodness, yeah, you get my point. Click on the 3D cursor right here, so this is in this little icon here, and this will basically make sure you scale everything down along, or I guess towards, the 3D cursor, which in this case is in the right place. So we'll just scale it down like that. And yeah, you know what, that looks a lot better. So because we're going for a very, you know, cartoony character kind of thing, we're going to exaggerate the features. So, you know, his claws are pretty buff already. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the stinger a lot bigger. So in edit mode, again, hit A a couple times to make sure you select everything. And yeah, just simply scale that up. Cool. Yeah, that looks a lot funnier. I quite like that. So what we can do now is add a pair of eyeballs. So hit Shift A, add a mesh, a UV sphere. We're going to add a mirror modifier again. So now that you've added the mirror modifier, go into edit mode, select those vertices, and move those out of the way like that. We're not even going to add a subdivision surface for this one because there is quite a lot of geometry here already, and the eyes won't be that big and that noticeable anyway, so we can probably get away with you know, saving some render time here. But again, we're going to click on that and click on Shade Smooth. So yeah, like you know, you can see that, you know, there's plenty of geometry for it to look decent. So edit mode, hit A a couple times to select the whole thing, and we're going to, well, let's, you know, tell you what, let's move this up like this so we can see what we're doing, and then we're just going to scale it down, probably like that, and then I guess we're just going to, you know, put them in the right place. So again, personal preference, you can put them wherever you like, but I'm probably just going to put them somewhere like this, where it's kind of goofy and kind of funny. And I'll tell you what, the modeling is pretty much done for this. Of course, again, we could go in and then, you know, spend hours just tweaking every single vertex, and we want to make sure everything's perfect. And the truth is, you will never get it perfect, no matter what you do. Cool, so now that we're done modeling, we can start adding textures. So what you're going to do is you're going to add in a new window. So this can be a bit tricky, but you want to basically you know, you put your mouse right in the corner right there next to this icon, and it'll turn into this little cross. Click on that and then just slide the window across like this. Then we're gonna add, well, basically gonna enter the shader editor. So this is like the window that will allow us to edit materials. So click on editor type and click on shader editor. So what we're gonna want to do is click on the material preview mode right here. So this will allow us to see materials, because in the other one it's just a pure like matcap default texture, I guess, to just help modeling. By default it's like this diffuse white material, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on, I guess we can start with the body. So click on the body mesh, and here we can, if you scroll down to the material tab, which is this little I guess tracker thing, you're going to want to hit on new, and this will basically create a texture for you. And here, if you want to get this out of the way, and here we are in the shader editor, and this is by default it'll give you the principled BSDF node. So in base color, click on the, well, this is just going to allow you to basically choose the color of your character, or of the scorpion. You know, you can make him pink if you want. I'm going to go for a more realistic black. Then in the roughness value, this basically defines how, basically how rough a texture is, right? So if you slide it all the way up, it's completely rough, and there's like you can't really see your reflection in it. But if you bring it all the way down, now we have the Darth Vader helmet, right? Which is very shiny, and you would definitely see your reflection in that. For a scorpion, that's definitely not realistic. So we're gonna probably something like 2.25, maybe something like that. We could leave it like that, but the thing is, with these scorpions, they tend to have a bit of like a roughness to them. They're not completely shiny and, you know, like silky smooth. A quick way to add like a roughness to them is basically to add a roughness mapper. In this case, we're gonna do a normal map because it's probably a lot more easy. So yeah, to add a node, it's just like in the 3D viewport. You can just add stuff by clicking on Shift A, select. So that would be texture, and we're going to add a noise texture. And a noise texture is basically going to generate grain, kind of like, you know, the static grain you'd see on old TVs. It's just going to generate this. It's just going to generate a grainy image, basically like a color. We could plug the color here, the color of this texture into the base color here, this would replace this black by well, whatever you plug it into here. So base color, if you click on that, right now, yeah, there you go. So this is basically what this noise texture is generating. It's like this weird, cloudy, textury, yeah, thing, texture. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change the scale first of all, because this is too big, and bring the scale maybe all the way up to maybe, you know what, let's make it 50. And then the detail, we're going to, yeah, definitely make that 0. And roughness, I think doesn't, yeah, it doesn't change anything. So leave that at whatever it was, 0.5. Yeah, that's right. So we could leave the scorpion as it is, but you know, it's I guess it looks kind of cool, but it's not exactly what we were looking for. So instead of plugging the color into the base color, oh, actually, we need to add something else, which is basically an interface between the color and the roughness. So it's a node that's going to say, it's going to take information from the color from the texture and turn it into information that the principled BSDF node can interpret as a normal map. Ugh. That was a mouthful, but basically it's just something you you just got to do. So add in a, I guess this would be, I never remember this, yeah, vector, and add in a normal map. So we're going to plug the color into the color of the normal map, and then the normal output into the normal input of the principled BSDF node. And as you can see, we have this hideous thing. And the reason why it's pretty hideous is because the normal map is way too strong. You can see the strength by default is set to 1, which is in some instances it's not enough, and in some cases like this, it's way too much. So you can see that 0 is basically, it'll just cancel it out. It's nothing. It's no, there's no roughness to it. And if you turn the strength up little by little, you can start seeing like detail appear. And I would actually probably go for a 0.2. But this is still way too, the grain is still way too thick, way too big. You know, we definitely want it to be a lot more, well, we want the grains to be a lot smaller than that. So we can simply go into scale, and I mean, yeah, just turn that up until you're happy with the size. Probably, yeah, probably something like that. And then the strength, whatever, you know, whatever you see fit. I would probably recommend you would wait till you actually start rendering to start messing with the normal map, because right now this is just a material preview. This isn't actually the render, and the strength of a normal map can definitely change depending on the lighting and, you know, things like that, which we'll see in just a second. So something that's good to keep in mind, or you know, it's a good habit, is to name your materials. In this case, we're only going to have a few, so it's not a big deal. But in a project where you have thousands of materials, it can quickly get confusing if you don't. So we're going to call this, I guess we'll just call it body. And we're probably just going to apply the same textures to most of these. So the legs, we're going to apply the same texture as the body. So instead of clicking on new and creating the same texture, that would take time. Just click on this little icon here, and then select the body material, which is the material we just created. And that will automatically apply it to the legs. And we're going to do the same thing with the claws. So select that and click on body. And there you go. So with the eyes and with the stinger, we're going to try something a little different. You'll see Emperor Scorpions have this really nice dark red stinger, and it looks very scary. So we're going to probably try and replicate that. So click on new material this time. And yeah, again, in the shader editor, you'll be greeted with the principled BSDF node. Base color, we're going to make this red. So we can make this a dark red by using this color palette thing. Or if you go in the hue saturation mode, you can bring the hue all the way down to, well, either all the way up to 0 or down to 0, or all the way up to 1. That will give you a pure red. Or of course in RGB, you can put the red all the way up in blue. I always use the hue saturation value mode. It's just a lot easier. So hue all the way down to 0, and then the saturation, we'll always want to bring down the saturation a little bit, because again, in nature you rarely have like completely 100% saturated colors. It's just not very natural, and also it just looks better in general, I think. The saturation, think of it as, I guess, ink that loses its pigment, so it'll just be a lot more like, you know, dull and just, yeah, like, well, white, I guess would be 0 saturation is always white. So bring that down to probably something like this. And then the value is the darkness. So 100% value would be in a light room, with a room with a lot of light, and all the way down would be in a very dark room. So a stinger would probably be quite dark, I would imagine. Again, when we're rendering, we'd always tweak these, you know, to make sure it looks okay. And then once we've selected that, we'll start messing with the roughness, because this is probably a bit too rough. So we'll bring this down to not all the way down, because it's just never looks that natural if it's too low, but probably something like this. And here we have a nice stinger. Actually, you know what? At this point, let's get rid of this the sketch, because now it's getting a bit annoying. So click on the annotate tool and go into note up here, and this is the, I guess, the layer it created. And basically what you can do is you can delete it, or in this case we're just going to hide it because we might need it later. Oh yeah, so once you've done that, make sure you click back on the select box tool. Yeah, so the last thing to do is we're probably just going to try and make these eyes look a bit nicer. So yeah, create a new material. Base color, we'll make it black again. This time we're just going to make the roughness 0%. To make them nice and shiny, and you know, I guess we could say they look pretty adorable. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start rendering it. So in this little icon here, you will have the render mode. This again is just a preview. It just gives you an idea of what your material is going to look like. When you hit on the render mode, it will actually render it. So depending on if you're new to Blender, if you're fairly, you know, if you've been doing it for a while, you will use a different render engine. The new guys always like to use Eevee. Eevee is a real-time render engine, and it's pretty good. But I just don't use Eevee because I'm not used to it, and I've always worked with cycles, and this is what we're going to use in this tutorial. Cycles. So this will basically, it's a ray tracing a render engine, and it gives you the best. It will always give you the most photorealistic results, but it will take a lot more processing power. So depending on how powerful your computer is, it might struggle with this a little bit. So the first thing you want to do is to change CPU to GPU compute, because most of the time GPUs will render a lot faster than a CPU. GPU, of course, is a graphics card, and CPU would be just the processor. And okay, so for now we can see it's looking a little bit boring. It's looking a bit, the background's a bit gray and we can't really see what's going on. That's because by default you will have a world, I guess a world light they call it, illumination or whatever. So that would be in this little icon here. So that would be the world properties. And then you want to basically, yeah, so you'll have it here, and under surface you will have a background, and the strength will be right here. So by default it's at 1. We don't want it at 1, we want it at 0. But now you can see, of course, the whole thing is in just complete pitch black. Of course, we haven't added any lights, and that's what we're going to do now. So the science behind lighting characters in 3D is just, it's insane how complicated and fascinating it can be. But for now, we're going to use what's called a classic 3-point light. By hitting Shift A, click on Light, and select the area lamp. So there's loads of different types. Well, actually there's only 4. There's only 4 different types of lamps, but the area lamp is the most common one. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of position this one. I'll tell you what, let's get rid of this window here, 'cause it's getting a bit annoying. So to do that, click on up on the top left corner here where the cross is, and basically click and drag to the left, which will close that window. Yeah, so this lamp, we're just going to position it kind of here. Again, hitting R twice to rotate that nice and conveniently. Maybe we'll put it like this. The first thing you'll notice is that it's actually not really making that much light. It is making light. If you zoom in, you can definitely see the reflection there. That's because by default these lamps have, I believe, 10 watts of power. So if you click on the lamp, go down to the little bulb icon here, then yeah, so the power by default is 10 watts, so we can simply crank that up to as high as we like. And of course you can see that now we're starting to actually see something. Let's make that 2000 for now, and let's make the lamp a little bit bigger, because a smaller lamp will result in harsher shadows. That's cool. It's kind of dramatic, but the problem is you'll have one side of the character that's very well lit, and the other side will be a shadow. This is called a key light, and what we're going to do now is add what's called a fill light, which will fill in those shadows. So to add the fill light, we can, you could just add the light and just set it up like we did for this one, or a lot more easy, we could just duplicate it. Click on solid mode, because it'll just make it easier to see the lamp. Select the lamp, hit Shift D, and duplicate it to the side like this, and by hitting R, just rotate it like that. Okay, lovely. And then maybe we'll scale this one down. And then back in rendered view, we can see now the problem is both these lights are the same intensity because they're duplicates. And the fill light will almost always be less powerful than the key light. So we'll probably, actually let's bring that all the way down. Here, let's bring that all the way down to 0. And then we'll slowly crank it up just so we can fill it in maybe something like this. Maybe, yeah, probably like 75 or whatever. Yeah, let's make that 75. I have OCD when it comes to rounding up numbers. Okay, so in a 3-point lighting setup, you have the key light, the fill light, and then you have a backlight, which will bring out like a nice outline or a nice rim. In the solid mode, select that lamp, duplicate it, and position it maybe somewhere like this, and rotate it. Maybe bring it down a little bit like that. Just basically, yeah, just position it where you feel would be right. But right now we can't really tell, so again, we'll go back into the rendered view. And now for the fill light, the important thing to know is that you would only position the fill light when you know where your camera would be positioned. So to enter the camera view, we will hit 0 on our keyboard, so 0. So it's kind of hard to see in the rendered view, but this is basically like your frame, so everything outside this square will not be rendered. But this is your camera. And so to position the camera, you could grab the camera like any 3D object and move it around, but there's a much better way to do this. So what you want to do is you want to click on the view menu, click on view, and then select camera to view. So what this will do is this will allow you to basically move around like you would normally, like around the, navigate around your object, but this time the camera will automatically snap to wherever you're looking through. So this is just a nice and easy way to position to frame your character. So we'll probably put it somewhere like this, maybe somewhere like that. And then in the 3D view, we'll click on this lamp, go back into rendered view, and then again, double R, we can then sort of position this where we want. Right now it's kind of hard to see what it's doing, but we will change the color of the backlight to more of a red. Again, this is all like the theory on lighting characters and stuff, but red usually indicates danger, and then scorpions usually are pretty dangerous. So we can basically just add like a nice little red outline there, and this really makes the character pop out of the background, and it just it just adds a nice little touch. And of course we can then go ahead and mess with the intensity. You usually don't want this one to be too intense. Again, it's more of a subtle light that really just brings a little extra oomph to the image. And I'll tell you what, we are pretty much done. The first thing I will notice here is that we can't actually see the tip of the stinger. From here, it just looks like this weird sphere. So what we can do is just exit that by hitting 3, and we can just maybe in edit mode. This is great how we can edit while in the rendered view. This is just an awesome new feature. I absolutely love it. So in edit mode, you can then just rotate this around, and we can maybe bring it up a little bit. We're cheating a little bit here because we're of course the mesh is clipping through the tail, but whatever. And yeah, that probably would look a bit better. Yeah, there you go. See, that looks a lot better. So it's always important to reflect back on the things you thought looked good. Once you're in rendered view and the lighting changes and a few things change, it's always good to just have a look and see what things can be improved. But in this case, I think we are pretty much done. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go in this little icon here, which is the camera render properties. We're going to click on film and then select transparent. Oops, transparent. This will make sure that when you render a PNG, you can, the background would be transparent, so you can slap it on top of an image or put it in a presentation or whatever, and you wouldn't have that ugly white outline. And so what we can do now is in the render properties, make sure the render sampling here is, you know what, in this case 128 is more than enough. This will define not the resolution, but the quality of your image. So the higher you go, the nicer, or the more, I guess, just the cleaner your image will look. But of course, the longer it'll take to render. And yeah, the animation where Tony climbs up the mountain, I think I rendered that at 2,000 samples, something stupid like that, which is why it took 32 days to render. And then of course, if you want a really clean render, what you're going to do is you're going to click on Denoising and select render. That means it'll denoise it when it's being rendered. And the denoising will just get rid of the artifact and the what we call fireflies when it's just like a rendering, just the rendering bugs, I guess, or just the graininess of the image. It'll just make it look a lot cleaner. And one last thing, if you want to then edit the actual resolution of your image, you would want to edit that right here in this tab. Okay, and then once you want to render it, click on render image, or I would recommend you use the keyboard shortcuts as they will save you a lot of time. And there it is. So it opened up in another window, which is why I couldn't capture it being rendered. But basically that's what we have for the first render. There's a few things I'd like to change real quick. The graininess on the claws are a bit too small. They look a bit too thin. And if you zoom in here, you'll see these weird artifacts with the lighting. That's due to the fact that there are not enough subdivisions on the mesh here. And if you even zoom in on the tail, you can definitely see what I'm talking about. You can really see how these, that you can definitely see like these straight lines, which is not what we want. So let's just go in and fix that real quick. So then in the modifier tab, we can see that the reason that happened is because the subdivision, like the 4 subdivisions we used, those are only for viewing. Those are only for the viewport display. As soon as you start rendering, it will take into account these ones, which is only 2. Which is why it wasn't that good. So we want to basically bump those up to 4, and we'll just do the same thing here, all the way up to 4, all the way, in this case it would be 3 because that's what we decided it would be, and then all the way up to 4. Okay, and now it's busy rendering. Here I'm using a 3080 graphics card, and there it is. Yeah, I actually quite like that. Looking pretty cool. Yeah, so once you're happy with your render, you want to click on Image, Save As, and then it's on the wrong screen. Okay, and then once you've selected the location on your computer where you want to save your file, I'll just call this Scorpion. You want to select the right image file or image format. I believe by default it's set to PNG. But you definitely, it might be JPEG, but you definitely want to select PNG. Then the color, you want it to be, you don't want it in black or white, you don't want it in RGB, but you want to select RGBA. A stands for alpha, which is transparent. Color depth, we'll leave it at 8. Compression, we'll leave it at 15. That's just fine. And then we'll hit save as image. And then we are done. Yeah, I guess that would be it for this particular tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too boring. Yeah, so if this seems a bit simplistic, a bit easy for you, definitely go check out the second one I have, which will be a lot more modeling heavy, I guess. But yeah, definitely subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this. I might make more. Let me know what you thought. Honestly, I'd be really interested in hearing your feedback. If you guys found it interesting, or if you have any thoughts, leave them below in the comments. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time.